So today we're going to be talking about fishing lines in the three main types, which are going to be your fluorocarbon, your monofilament, and your braid. Alright, so the first one I want to talk about is fluorocarbon. Now I don't care about brands, so pick whatever brand works for you, but we'll be going over some simple facts of what each line does. So first off, we're going to talk about the fluorocarbon, the pros and cons of each one. So the fluorocarbon is a single strand of polyvinylide fluoride. That's hard to say. I say that 3 times in a row. So the pros of fluorocarbon are that it's virtually invisible, it's good for clear water, and it absorbs light. It does sink, which is good for those casting baits that you want the line to sink with it. It is more stiffer and abrasion resistant. It has more of a sensitive bite, so as soon as that is getting nibbled on, you're going to feel that sensitivity increased with fluorocarbon versus some of the other ones. It does not absorb water like monofilament will absorb water, and it's often used for and is a good leader material because of these pros. Now for the cons, it is usually more expensive, does usually have a higher backlash chance on a baitcaster. Just as much of a pro, it is a con that because of its stiffness, it is a little bit harder to do knots with. And those knots, sometimes if you don't use the correct knot, can weaken the line. And as a result, you do have to change the line more often, or every single time you change a lure, you'll be cutting off additional line to make up for that weakened spot. So you'll go through more line more often. So the next one I'll talk about is the braid. Again, brand doesn't matter, but this is what we're talking about. We're talking about braid. So for braid, it's a fused or braided strands of ultra high molecular weight polyurethane, and it is often called braid or a microfilament. Now the pros for this is that it's some of the strongest line per weight that you can get. It has low to almost no stretch, which is great for those hook sets where you need a good strong instant hook set. There's no stretch. It's thin, which means more often than not you can get more line on your reel because of how thin it is. It's ideal for setting the hook again at a distance where when there's no stretch, obviously the more distance in the line, the more stretch in the line, the harder that hook set. It does not absorb water, again, much like fluorocarbon. It has no memory or low memory, which for memory what that means is if you've ever seen your reel and you let out the line and it looks all curly, all wound up like that, that's the memory. It's staying in its last position that it was in, and braid does not tend to do that. It has a low or no memory. It will stay just as thin and wispy as it was when it was first wound. It is UV resistant, which is good. Obviously when you're out fishing, there's a lot of sun. It means you have to replace your line, hopefully less. For the cons, it does have a higher visibility. Obviously braid is not, it doesn't come in a clear color. It does come in different colors for different types of water, but it is not of lower visibility as mono or fluorocarbon are. It does need a backing. Usually if you're using a baitcaster, you have to start with a backing. Most people use a monofilament backing followed up with the braid tied together. Again, the price, it is a lot pricier. It does tend to tangle a little easier, and it is a lot harder to untangle when it does bird's nest or get tangled. And now I know people might get upset by this when I say there's a low abrasion resistance. I'm not saying it doesn't have any abrasion resistance. What I'm just saying is that it has a lower abrasion resistance than the other two. The last one we'll talk about is mono or monofilament, which is a single strand of nylon usually. The pros for monofilament are the low visibility again, less backlash, it's good for a baitcaster. It floats, good for topwater lures. Again, opposite of fluorocarbon where it sinks. Pros, cheapest, easily the cheapest to get across any brand really. It's got good knot strength and good abrasion resistance. So overall, for a beginner, monofilament is probably where most people should start. Again, because of those characteristics of it being less backlash, cheapest, good knot strength, good abrasion resistance. It's a good overall one for a beginner. For cons, it does have high elasticity. So again, the more distance, the more of that stretch, which can create a harder hook set. Because of that stretch, it's not given quite as strong of a hook set, especially with those fish with harder lips. It is softer, opposite again of fluorocarbon that's stiffer. Again, a pro that can also be a con. Because it's softer, it is more susceptible to injury. It does have a high memory. Again, that curling effect after it's sat on the reel for a long time. When you cast your line, you get that curled look all the way out. That's the memory from it sitting on the reel in that circle. It does deteriorate in UV light, and it does absorb water. Again, that's important to note when you're tying your knots. Most people will wet them to get a good knot. But overall, again, because of the low cost, even though you might have to replace it because of UV light deteriorating it, and it being softer and deteriorates easier, it is easily to replace dollar per dollar than the other two. But what I'll say is, I don't believe there should be a perfect answer for which is the best overall line, because each one kind of has its own role and has its own reason to be on different reels that you have. Again, with monofilament, the fact that it floats, that makes it great for topwater lures. For fluorocarbon, the fact that it sinks is great for your diving lures that you want it to sink and you want it to blend in with the environment. And then braid with again that low and no stretch for that great long distance hook set, ripping through lily pads, all that kind of heavy cover. Again, with the no memory, high UV resistance, it's a kind of the mule, the working horse of the two. But again, it comes at a higher cost, so you really want to make sure you're using it for what it should be used for. And I don't think either three of these should be a perfect answer for every type of fishing that you're doing. So if you liked this video, make sure to drop a comment, a like, and subscribe. It helps with the channel, and I hope to do more of these type of videos in the future. Thank you.